Nolecast recorded live.
Those were the days.
A tip of the hat to the old talk shoe days there. All right, we're streaming live here. Decided to jump live, record podcasts that we had talked about earlier in the week when I had to abstain thanks to a air conditioning unit that wasn't fully cooperating. And back in front of you guys tonight, Bud, appreciate you giving us your thoughts on your time up there in Charlotte, what we could take away from ACC Media Days, and appreciated and kind of enjoyed your rundown on how you built your ACC team. So, with that, tonight, we're going to have a focused show that is mainly on recruiting. As always, we'll thank our friends at Tarpon Cellars. Tarpon Cellars, world-class wine, great Florida State guys, working out in Napa Valley to create some of the better reds on the market. And we're so fortunate to have them as a sponsor. TarponCellars.com is the website. Nolecast is the coupon code. Bud, let's get into this recruiting conversation.
Yeah, man, let's do this thing. So, first order of business, I said you can believe the Hakeem Williams hype as far as FSU being an actual player for him was real. Not they would get him, but they would be an actual player for him was real if he showed up for that July 30th weekend. And he was at practice today, throwing up the chop as he walked in. You can see that on Knowles 24/7. By the way, they're running a great 60% off promo right now there. So that is that's pretty awesome. The best FSU website in the business for my money. Disclosure, I work there, but again, there's a lot of reasons why it's the best, not just because I work there. Anyway, Hakeem Williams is on campus. This is good. I got asked the other night, hey, what are your thoughts on Ron Dugans? I was like, well, my thought is that Hakeem Williams seems to like Ron Dugans, so that's a pretty important opinion as far as what do you think of Ron Dugans right now. That's a good sign, man. I don't know what else to say about it. I don't think that this means that you're going to beat out Georgia or A&M, even if you were to get a commit from him, even this weekend or something crazy like that. Like, you still have a long way to go. You still need a lot of things to go right for you. You probably need to win, 8 games and be very competitive in the NIL space as well, which I know FSU is working towards doing. But that's a big sign that he's on campus, man. And what did you think when you saw that?
There's certainly been some behind the scenes chatter of positivity over the last month or so that's kind of builded here or built up over time. I think it's a great, confirmation that you're fully involved. This is not a situation where you put a recruiting weekend where other people didn't or something like that. Everybody has the same August 1st, quiet period here. So there is value in getting a kid, and there's an exceptional amount of value to getting a kid to come up and show you, again, this is not indicative as to where he's going to sign, but you're a major player in his recruitment right now. And I don't think anybody, even those absent, those on the Florida State beat would say otherwise. So I think it's very positive. I think you've got some relationships there as far as former high school teammates that are helping. And this is, if you're going to sign a super elite skill position player, does the list begin and end here? Maybe not. Maybe it does, but it certainly begins with Hakeem Williams, and awesome to get him on campus and up for the next couple of days.
No doubt about it. Another kid on campus, Blake Nicholson.
Yeah.
The linebacker. Pretty excited there, man.
A lot of positivity here with this recruitment as well over the past couple of weeks. Basically it looked like it had come down to Florida State and Oregon. Idea that this has trended in the right direction for Florida State. So we'll wait and see if that ultimately comes to fruition. But I think Florida State's put themselves in a good place here, and this one may find its resolution before the Williams recruitment does. Which, ultimately, I think you're going to be fighting for Hakeem Williams all the way up till the second Wednesday in December or whatever it is, early signing day is. But this Nicholson recruitment is interesting, and it sure as hell would be great for Florida State to get an actual high quality linebacker and have that as a focal point that they can build around.
I mean, you saw who he walked into practice, right? You saw who he walked into practice with.
Who was that?
Derek Ray.
Right. Yeah.
Who's known the family for a long time, right? So like that's look. I think a lot of people come to Nolecast because they know we don't try to BS them. You guys know my thoughts on the recruiting of the back half of this defensive staff. So, DC, linebacker coach, DB coach. I'm not impressed. I said 2 shows ago, if Norvell works out long term, I don't think those guys are the guys who he's going to work out with. That's my opinion. It's unchanged. But they like the Ward kid more than I do. So that's fine. But I don't think everybody on staff necessarily totally agrees with that. They also really like the Nicholson kid. Everybody likes Nicholson kid because he's really good. And they are very lucky that Derek Ray has that connection there. So that's big time. All right. If you get him, that's 2 backers. That's pretty much all you want to take in the class. And of course, you are going to have to win some games, in my opinion, if you want to do that. But I feel like the staff feels like they can win some games this year, which is good. And if you guys recall, you called BS on us last year, but Ingram and I both heard the same thing from guys on staff. What did they tell us last year? We would love to get to 6 wins. Man, I would take 6 wins and bank it right now and hit fast forward on the season to signing day. And they did not get to 6 wins, but at the time that was blasphemous to say. And I'm not trying to do the whole I told you so thing. I'm only saying that to remind you that this year, that's not the vibe I'm getting from them. Now, maybe it's because they know they have to win more than 6 games this year if they want to work out long term. That's certainly possible. But I do sense that they're a little more confident than they used to be. So that's encouraging. They've done a nice job building some depth on the roster. They've not done a nice job of acquiring true top-level difference makers, especially at the receiver position. And linebacker as well. So Nicholson and Williams, if you could get those guys, would certainly be a big-time help. And I do think you have some unique relationships at play there, both. So it's not just like, hey, go try to outspend the world with NIL inducement type stuff, right? You do have some ends there that I think probably frustrate some other teams quite a bit. Like Oregon does not play around with Division Street. That's their, collective thing, right? I mean, they got a guy up there who's basically like Mike Ilitch. Remember when Ilitch, the owner of the Tigers, was trying to win those games, and like his family was like, we don't share the same love for the Tigers you do, bro, but like you're just spending like crazy. It's like, it's okay. I'll run a $300 million payroll, and like half my net worth is tied up in the luxury tax for MLB. I think Oregon is very much trying to do that right now with an aging, benefactor. So, yeah, man, that's some positive recruiting news for them at this moment.
I think, and we mentioned this about a month ago or so, I think Florida State has its house in order when it comes to recruiting in a manner that they haven't had in a while. So we'll, there's more recruitment discussion to talk about. And, it doesn't mean, as I said maybe it was a month ago, a couple weeks ago, it doesn't mean that Florida State's going to sign the number 3 class in the country or something like that. But I do think that they have a better feel for what they're doing. They've got a better feel for how they're going to go about doing it. And they've got a decent amount of support. And you just got to realize that Florida State's going to do this kind of their way. And by that, I mean, like, I don't think there's ever going to be one person that's ubiquitous with Florida State recruiting. There's never going to be somebody that has a Twitter account and is popping off about the, recruits that they're getting or anything else. It's going to be a little bit of a different operation. There's not, like I said, there's not going to be one person, one group, one business or something like that. But I do think collectively, you've got an awful lot of people kind of rowing in the right direction, and that Florida State's in as good of a place to compete in the modern landscape as they have been. And to be fair, there was only one direction to go from last December, but I think they've made up a lot of ground, and I think they're in a place to win some of these kind of quasi-national battles. And ultimately, I think the roster will be a major beneficiary of that. So.
I would agree with you. Yeah, the people I talk to, they absolutely love Mike Alford. They love Ponder. They think this thing's going in the right direction. They're very confident that the program is in good hands. People on the board of trustees are people who value football and care about football and want to see it go.
Did you say they love Ponder?
Yeah, for the boosters.
Oh, right. Okay, thank you. I wasn't
sure.
Sorry,
not Christian Ponder. Although I'm sure they probably love Christian.
I love
too.
Christian Ponder. Yeah, great, absolutely. So,
yeah, I know. Like I texted these guys today. We were talking about a guy we're going to talk about in a second here in Brock Glenn, but I was talking to Shannon and Chad, and I was like, honestly, like I do think FSU administratively is in the best place it's been since I graduated from there in 07, maybe a decade. So, man, 15 years since I graduated. I am old. I feel like overall things are moving in the right direction. We'll see if they move in the right direction on the field in terms of wins. But one thing that always moves in the right direction, in my opinion, is the relationship we have with Shannon and Chad of the legendary team. 400 Nolecast listeners can't be wrong. They got their loans to them. I've done it twice, both my home mortgage and my refi. My sister got one through those guys. It's just, look, I send my family to them. I believe in what these guys do. It's a great product. They work their butts off for you. They're going to try to get you the best possible loan that they can. And you might get a little friendly Noel banner as well. And if they lose games, then you kind of commiserate with them as well. 844-FSU loan is the number to call. 844-FSU loan is the number to call to get those dudes. I feel like we're speeding through this tonight, but there's not a ton going on. So people asked about the New Orleans offense or the tackle from Louisiana, Lance Hurd. Again, like, I don't put credence in FSU landing top players from Louisiana unless they're actually killing it, like maybe the 1 year under Jimbo, and even then they still finished second for kids quite a bit that year. They're just not you don't pull kids out of Louisiana that LSU wants for the most part, unless some really weird things happen. So it's cool if you get them to visit. It looks good for the staff. The whole, like, hey, maybe if you finish second for, maybe he transfers to you if it doesn't work out type thing, blah, 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 blah. But I'm not putting a whole lot of energy into that because they're not going to sign that kid, in my opinion. It's just not it's not a thing to me, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. Why don't we move over to the Brooklyn discussion? So we'll have a a good back and forth here, and just an honest take on a situation that I certainly understand where some of the fan base are getting a little fired up about. I get it. I certainly get it. I also get the kid's perspective if he chooses Ohio State. For to put this in as simplistic terms as possible, I think Florida State did everything they could, but you'll have probably more details surrounding that idea. And if right now, if you're Florida State and you're competing with Ohio State and Ohio State green lights a kid, going to be hard as hell for you to get him. And that's just the reality of the situation. Not a whole lot for Glenn to lose. If he goes up there, gets lapsed on some kid that they grab next year or something like that, okay, maybe you talk to him again in the portal. I don't know. Doesn't mean that they did the wrong thing with Parson. Doesn't mean anything. It just means that you're probably not going to sign a quarterback at the level that you want, and the ramifications of that we can discuss after this particular conversation.
I think you really said it well there, man. Them telling Chris Parson, okay, like, we're good, is not related, in my opinion, to them missing on Brock Glenn. If they do miss on Brock Glenn, my crystal ball is in for Ohio State. I think he's going to pick Ohio State now that it's been confirmed that he's a take with the Buckeyes. If you guys don't know, Brock Glenn, 3 or 4 star, I think, depending on the network, quarterback. He is going to commit on Saturday on 24/7 Sports. Anyway, I'm expecting it to be Ohio State at this point. That's why I put my crystal ball in for Ohio State. FSU got on Brock Glenn fairly early. They recruited him extremely well. He had a flat-out awesome official visit to Tallahassee, as did his entire party. Every other school recruiting Brock Glenn were like, yeah, he's going to Florida State. That's the word they got from him, right? Our Auburn writers and Mississippi State guys, they all put in crystal balls to FSU as well. At the time, it was not believed that he was actually probably a priority or a take for Ohio State, but things happen. I'm not sure that Ohio State can get the Novosad kid, so that's who they sort of wanted to get. Ohio State's in a bit of a weird spot here because they do have Raiola committed for the 2024 class. Raiola very well might be the best player in the entire country next year, not just quarterback, but like he might end up, he could end up being the number 1 overall player in the nation. They also have 2 other 5-star quarterbacks on their roster. So I think your point here is very valid. An FSU fan might say, hey, look, Brock Glenn is talented, but he also was one of the worst performers at Elite 11, which is true. It didn't make the final 11. Wasn't close. Has a lot of things he needs to work on cleaning up in his game, but he has talent. Why would he go somewhere that he's not going to play? And my counter is, look, man, and this will probably piss off some of y'all, so I don't apologize, but I'm just giving you a warning. If I'm Brock Glenn and Ohio State tells me, hey, come on down, I'm going. Because Ryan Day has put a ton of kids in the NFL. That program goes to the college football playoff more often than not. If I don't start, cool. I got coach for Ryan Day for 2 years. I'm a redshirt sophomore. Now I got 3 years left to play in my career. I'll go somewhere. Everybody will pretty much want me coming out as long as I take care of business and the staff says good things about me. That's kind of the downside. To the upside is maybe I really hit and I play well and I can start at Ohio State. Again, a program which is just in a much better spot than FSU's in right now. Should FSU have seen, and I'm sure that pisses people off, but guys, like right now, they're really not comparable programs. They're not playing on the same level. FSU would aspire to get back to that level, but that is several years away for sure. And you think about like the guys they're bringing in. I mean, Carnell Tate, Brennan Ennis, like there's no doubt they're bringing in a ton of studs in that class. So look, if Brock Glenn picks Ohio State, I don't blame one bit. I would do the same thing. With apologies to Tokars and Norvell and those guys. I get it. Like I'm not telling the kid where to pick. I'm just saying, to me, it's an obvious choice if you actually get the green light from Ohio State because of the transfer rule. Now, it's not an obvious choice 5 years ago because you couldn't just transfer immediately. You'd have to sit out a year, which costs you eligibility. But if you can transfer immediately, no problem. FSU signed Duffy last year. Norvell has a very good track record with portal quarterbacks as well. Like that's almost entirety of what he does is take kids out of the portal and get pretty good quarterback play out of them. If you look at his career historically, FSU, Memphis, and Arizona State. And they have a really good guy, I think, in 2024 in Luke Kromenhoek. So I'm not that worried about this one, man. I know that sounds crazy. And people are like, oh, they said they wanted to bring in 2 quarterbacks, and now they're going to bring in none in the high school level, which we may or may not know. They may decide to take somebody. They can always, evaluate senior film and see who they like and pluck somebody. But yeah, I don't really know that. I don't really know that I would have played this thing differently, to be honest. And there's plenty of times when you guys jump on here and you get the notification on your phone, and I feel like Ingram's like, hey, they messed this up. This was dumb. Why'd they do this? Or, I'm saying like, this is just not the way I would have played it. For instance, I told you guys at the time, I think they're late to offer Jakeem Jackson. Okay? Jakeem Jackson committed to Florida tonight. All right? Like that's my opinion. I think they were too late to offer him. It's not like the most popular FSU podcast in the world's been talking about him for 2 years. Anyway, yeah, that's an unforced error on their part, in my opinion. But
that's a best college sports podcast in the world.
Oh, that's correct.
For best worth. Yeah. So
fair enough.
Let's not forget that.
Look, here's the other thing. There are certain kids who you are not going to be in the ball game with because they think Norvell's on the hot seat. I can put out videos. I can tell you that, look, I've talked to some of the guys who have like a net worth of over $50 million who would have to cut these checks. They have no interest in doing so. None. It's football-only facility. It's getting NIL more entrenched and hopefully at some point endowed, right? It's a lot of other things. Presentations to, if you can, the SEC, Big Ten at some point. Making sure that all your house is in order. They have zero interest in pushing the reset button again at all. Like to them, Mike Norvell is not on the hot seat at all. But he is on the hot seat of a lot of these media lists. And look, those media lists, I think, will be correct if Mike misses a bowl game again. That's just common sense, as you noted it last show. I think we differ on how hot the seat would be, if it's 4 wins or 5 wins, but it would certainly be hot either way. But these aren't guys that are expecting them to win 9, 10 ball games this year. They're like, hey, get to 7, get to 8, which is doable. Maybe not incredibly likely on the 8 part, but it's certainly possible. You just get a couple decent breaks and you have Travis stay healthy.
Yeah. Win 7, win a bowl game. This this is one of the rare. You and I have a massive disparity in or no, we do not have a massive disparity in bowl game importance. I don't believe they're all that important. You believe their importance is close to zero. But if they have any importance at all, it's for a program that's in the state that it's in right now. And you need a little traction. You need a little, I hate this term as it's getting overused. You need proof of concept. You need to be able to sit in somebody's living room and tell them 3 to 5 to 8. We're moving in the right direction. And I don't always circle back to Jimbo Fisher, but beating South Carolina and beating Notre Dame in those 2 bowl games were incredibly important for the program to kind of build, find confidence itself, have more belief on the recruiting trail, if you want to interpret that as you can. This is the type of program that 7 wins at a bowl game victory would have it in as good of a state as it's been in since probably 2016.
Yeah, exactly right. Like we've said this. I mean, since I asked the question, are we just playing out the string on signing day when Hunter flipped? And we may look back and realize that we are. It's possible. I mean, I can't deny that. Here's the thing. If Norvell's going to work out, it's probably not going to be a quick flip around, right? Because they don't have that new coach smell. You're going to have to sell proof of concept.
I think we've probably missed the window on quick flip at this point. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, exactly right. So, I'm not that worried about this quarterback situation right now. Maybe I'll look like a dumbass in a couple of months or a couple of years. But if they win, they have a really good chance of holding on to Crum and Hawk. If they don't, and I know we're getting a lot of tweets about like they should have kept Chris Parson. I totally disagree. I fully understand why they did that, and I think you guys just have to trust me or you don't. But in my opinion, they did the right thing there. You have to be smart with how you manage your resources and with what things you will allow in your program and what you won't.
Why don't we transition the conversation from there to Jordan Travis, because they're not totally unrelated. And the question that we've kind of received via text DM over the past couple of weeks is, how many years do you have with Jordan, and is this in all likelihood his final year? If you listen to the kid, he's pretty clear about saying this is probably going to be his last year of college football. There certainly could be some circumstances that you end up seeing 2 years here, depending on what's possible for him, what level of professional athletics is available for him. And, NIL is interesting, man. NIL is, can you give a kid high 5 figures, offer him the chance at a MBA or something like that, and completely set his life on a trajectory that going and playing Canadian football or something like that for 3 years would not do? And what I mean is that Jordan Travis is here for 2 years, leaves campus with an MBA, and is able to have a professional trajectory that he would not otherwise have. I think that obviously this is all, we're all talking about things that occur after this year. This is all down the road to some extent. But I think you can sit in front of Jordan and give him a path that includes playing 2 more years at Florida State that could very likely be the best path for him for the next 20, 30, or 40 years in his life.
100% agree. Like, do you think Jordan Travis is going to play NFL football?
If he does, it'll be 8 to 12 snaps a game on special teams or something like that. I don't think Jordan Travis is a down-to-down player in the NFL. I don't.
Who's the guy for the Saints? Who's the guy for the Saints who does the modified Wildcat stuff for them? Taysom Hill? That sound right?
Is that the guy that
the real
Sean
big white
Payton's
guy
been in love with for a couple years now?
Yeah. They pull whoever the quarterback is at the goal line, and like that's probably what it looks like if he was to play quarterback in the league, and it's unlikely that would work, right? I don't think he throws the ball well enough to play professional football or to play NFL football. I mean, professional football is technically like down to arena league, so whatever. My thing is, if you get somebody to talk some sense to him, because like multiple people asked him at media day, and we're like, hey, is this your last year? Are you preparing this to be your last year? It was very clear that like, yeah, I'm preparing as if this is my last year. I expect this to be my last year. Okay. if somebody could talk some sense to him, and I think he's got people in his ear right now that are sort of like saying, "Hey, like you're going to go pro," and okay, maybe, but if you realize you're going to be a 23-year-old or 24-year-old returning quarterback who can work on his masters, who's more physically developed than most of these guys you're playing against in college, who would be undoubtedly one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC in 23 if he were to come back. It's not crazy to think that like a player like Jordan in the NIL market could fetch like 90K, maybe 100K, right? Like that's a very, very valuable player to have, especially if he knows your offense. We heard about Fabian Lovett say, "Hey, like I would have gone to the NFL if I didn't have the opportunity to make some money with NIL." I'm just saying, like, I'm not convinced that this is Travis's last year. I would be trying to set the groundwork now and be like, "Hey, man, you're not an NFL quarterback. It's a really pretty good deal to get a free Masters and maybe 90 or 100K or whatever in NIL if you could get it."
Yeah. I personally don't know if it's worth broaching that subject matter right now. I'd probably just let the season play out. If he's got people in his ear, he's going to make a decision. So be it. I don't know that you're going to turn that around anyway. But being quarterback for Florida State's pretty awesome, and not being quarterback for Florida State and playing in Canada or something like that, which those guys don't make a whole lot of money, unfortunately, is not very awesome. And it would just be interesting to see if you don't end up having a quarterback here for maybe a little bit longer than he himself has necessarily made public comments that support. So,
yeah, 100%. Anyway, looking at the chat, people are still worried about the quarterback recruiting. Look, one of two things is probably going to happen. Either you win this year and you hold on to Carmen Hawk, or you have a new staff. And they have new coach smell on them, right? Some people in chat, will Duffy hang around if JT came back? I don't get the sense that like Duffy is somebody who would like have to bolt if he's not the starter by year 2, especially if he redshirts this year.
So we'll talk camp more when full pads come on. We've never been a podcast that's made a whole lot of conversation, based off what first day of practice looks like or something like that. You can certainly take some things away about seeing how guys, body composition is, etc. But sometimes those conversations can get a little weird too. So I like to wait until we have actual football to talk about, and we're not talking about how kids redefined his pecs or something like that over the summer. That's it always gets a little dicey for me. One kid that is on campus,
decline bench, I heard he was doing.
Yeah, he's putting those hands together. Absolutely. Malik Feaster is a kid that painfully.
The DB from Jackson State
is from Jacksonville
State.
Jacksonville State. Yeah, on campus. Interesting. Doesn't have Florida State appears to be his best offer that he's received. I don't know if that's what we think. They have maybe one scholarship left to allocate. Is that right, Bud? So, yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of telling that you'd offer a DB at this point, but we'll see what comes of it. He's on campus. Heard some positive things so far about that, but that would be an interesting allocation of your final resource.
I mean, at this point, I think most of the transfers that they've taken over 2 years have been a net positive. I'm not willing to give them like 100% of that. They do take some guys who miss. I am mostly concerned about receiver, but that's unfair because like the one guy they took who was actually proven was Winston Wright, who then got in that car crash almost immediately, right? They clearly think they need another DB, man. Look at all the DBs they evaluated. The only guy that in the DB, though, like transfer recently, who I think they kind of went in on was the Newton kid who ended up picking TCU. And he's going to start at TCU, I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure he would have started at FSU. So, like, my read on this with how they're using their resources is that they feel they need to take another defensive back. So it wouldn't shock me if they take the kid. I mean, at this point, you're probably not adding anybody else. It comes down to like, do you want to give another Johnny Tryhard a scholarship at tight end? Basically, like maybe you can get an even 10, of guys who just shouldn't be on an FSU roster at tight end. But that's not to like take shots at the walk-ons. They're walk-on. Well, I guess they're not walk-ons anymore if they're on scholarship, but they're still walk-on quality players. Yeah. See, look, we're not excuse making. We can criticize when we need to. I do love the chat thinks we're being too positive, like us. The podcast that kind of gets the reputation of being too negative all the time.
That's
Mainly 'cause
a
of me.
label I could deal with, certainly. Want to thank our friends at congruityhr.com. Matt Lewis been a fantastic asset for us. Had another inquiry about potentially working with him last week. Had nothing but incredibly positive feedback as to the experiences that others have had, and just talked to Jonathan Breimer over at Select Shades, and he's been working with Congruity for almost a year now, and nothing but very positive things to say. So thank you to those who have chosen to support the people that make the Nolecast possible. Congruity HR turning into a longtime partner of the Nolecast, whether it be payroll, HR solutions, anything else. I know firsthand Matt Lewis can help make your business easier and more efficient. Would highly suggest you reach out to him. And as always, if you're interested in a third-party introduction, more than welcome to DM me or email me, and we'll go from there. So big thank to Congruity, Matt Lewis, and his team. And Bud, well, we do one or two listener questions, and we'll make it one of our more abbreviated Nolecast here, as we're not all that far away from getting into our position preview series, all the other things, snap count draft, which honestly has become one of my favorite Nolecast that we do for the year. So an awful lot of things on the horizon.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited. I'm going to New Orleans as well. Are you going to New Orleans?
I am. Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. So that'll be awesome. We'll do an on-site show there. I thought I knew that. So listener questions. What do we have tonight?
We've got actually a question submitted from the recently referenced Jonathan there. He says, it's almost been a year of retrospect. Looking back, what really happened with the Jacksonville State game? Is the main lesson to prepare for every opponent, or did more factors convene? And did the staff perhaps want to believe there was something at quarterback that practice otherwise told them they didn't have? And how likely that it would happen again to this staff and team? Jonathan, appreciate your question.
You want to go first on that?
I mean, I think hope is great, and hope leads us through things in life when whether otherwise we have challenges that we would not be able to get through. I also think hope can fool you, and hope can lead you to believe things that you haven't otherwise seen. And I think a couple plays against Notre Dame made this staff believe that they had Mackenzie Milton of a couple years ago, and maybe even Mackenzie Milton, not necessarily pre-leg injury, but that this kid had magic that only came on when the game lights came on, because it sure as hell didn't come on in practice. And I think they got a little intoxicated on hope. I do. And they got cute. Yes. I know everybody talks about the one or two plays where they had Jordan and McKenzie on the field at the same time. Trust me, man, if you go back and look at that game, there was a whole lot of other cuteness going on in what they were trying to do with that offense. And, ultimately, if a receiver catches the ball early, you probably beat this team by 20. It didn't happen. You had the program's most embarrassing loss. From lessons learned, yeah, I don't think you'd ever allow an offensive staff to basically treat a game as though it was some kind of, Madden exhibition where they wanted to work on some stuff that you weren't sure you were ever going to see the rest of the year.
Yeah, I do think there's something to be said that they seem to get the team to play hard for them over the second half of the year, and the team didn't quit. I also think they probably misevaluated what they had in this team somewhat, which, sounds crazy, but if you take a step back, and I totally agree with you on what went down with Milton. There was this thought that maybe he's a gamer because he's not really good in practice, right? Like he looks gimpy in practice. Do you realize that Tennessee played Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker for like almost 10 quarters last year? Let's look this up real fast. This is how we get to 40 minutes because I enjoy doing this. Tennessee last year, right? Joe Milton, who cannot play a lick of quarterback. He would be a great tight end if he had just stopped screwing around with that. First 2 games, they lost to Pitt, by the way, in part because they played Joe Milton so much in that game. 6.0 yards per attempt against Bowling Green, 4.2 yards per attempt against Pitt. He also played a decent number of snaps in the loss to Florida. And then from that point on, with the exception of when Hooker got hit against Georgia, he really didn't play again. Hendon Hooker had like 35 touchdowns and 6 picks last year. Tennessee was definitively playing the wrong guy last year, and they started the wrong guy. It wasn't like they both played in the opening thing and like, oh, we're going to go with Milton. No, they thought that Joe Milton was the dude.
Mm-hmm.
A terrible evaluation. Here's another one for you. Let's go to Utah. Bet you Florida wish that Utah would continue to play this guy. Wait, wasn't it? Hold on. You remember Cam Rising?
Yeah.
Like the reigning Pac-12 Player of the Year type guy. Pretty good player. So last year, he played most of the games. He did not, however, play the first 3 games. And in the first 3 games, this guy named Charlie Brewer was playing. Charlie Brewer is a bad quarterback. He's probably a good guy, but he's bad at quarterback. He did lead Baylor to some wins one year. And by lead, I use the term lead very, very selectively here. It's basically just like he was the quarterback when they won games, but they were not winning games, because of that. They played him for 3 games, including 2 losses. Utah lost to BYU. They only scored 17 points. This kid was 15 of 26 for 147, which is under 6 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. And he's not a runner either. They also lost San Diego State with him playing. And he played kind of like crap against Weber State in the opener too. Then they put in this other kid. And Cam Rising does something that's pretty cool. He goes 204 for 320, which is 64%, 2,493 yards, 7.8 yards per attempt, and a 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Staffs get the quarterback decision wrong all the frickin' time, even when it's a lot more obvious than McKenzie Milton and Jordan Travis. This is not trying to give FSU a pass here, but very clearly, this is something this is an inefficiency that I'm not sure how you fix. It's really easy to think one guy is better when he's in fact not. This is why some of these undervalued assets.
Absolutely.
Do you think Georgia got it right with Johnson? No. A first round edge rusher? You're telling me they correctly evaluated him and gave him the right amount of playing time? I know they were loaded, but you let that guy walk?
Well, didn't Van Dyke not play for the first 3 games or 4 games of Miami's season last year or whatever? I mean, it's just quarterback in particular seems to be a place where evaluations get mishandled. But you're right, it is a broader problem, and it's just I think you're I'll go back to what I said, and I don't mean to be redundant. I think you were infatuated by the idea of what might be there, and you wanted it to be true, and it just wasn't there. So,
yeah.
Chris has a question. Says, lifelong Knowles fan from the state of Mississippi. Love the pod. Hands down the best team-specific content I've found, podcast or otherwise. Thank you, Chris. That has always been our goal, is to be as good of a team-specific podcast as we can be. I have to admit, I'm afraid my listening to the pod may have had an unattended side effect. The first episode I listened was the one during Jimbo's final year where you all reported getting a request from multiple groups out of Texas asking about your availability to talk on a certain day in November after the end of the season. Seems like it was the beginning of a long, slow march to where we are now. Question for the pod. If Norvell's time at Florida State is up after 23 or 24, in what order of these things contributed to his exit and his lack of success? Jimbo Fisher and the damage that the program sustained before he had left, COVID, Willie Taggart, Florida State's out of conference scheduling, the Travis Hunter / Coach Prime situation last Wednesday, or Norvell himself.
COVID number one with a bullet, like by far. I think we are going to see a lot of these guys who got hired in 2020, who get fired, go and have success elsewhere.
Yep. I'm not saying that this is number one, but I just want to say that the Travis Hunter situation, I personally would write off if the other things hadn't occurred on early signing day that occurred. And Wesley Besaint 18 hours earlier or 36 hours earlier, whatever it was. It was the fact that you got slapped around by Tennessee on a kid that you really should have signed. You just didn't have, you had a bad day. You had a really bad day before the Travis Hunter stuff ever happened. And I know Hunter's what stands out, and I'm not blaming people for grouping that, but I honestly think a lot of people would just write that off as a one-time crazy ass thing that happened if you had not had all the other failures of that fateful Wednesday in December. So yeah, it's COVID in my opinion as well. I do think that, blaming Willie Taggart or Jimbo Fisher, there's some variety there. But when you take a job, you've got to have an idea as to what's there and what you're going to inherit. And if Florida State's here trying to hire you as the coach of Memphis, it's because things haven't gone well, and you've got to be somewhat aware of that. So, yeah, interesting question. A little bit different than what we get. So, Chris, appreciate your listenership. Glad that you've been with us for 5 years as a content creator. You want to produce content that people can come during surges of interest, like coaching changes, coaching speculation, and hopefully your content's good enough that they stick around. So to hear that you've been with us for 5 years is fantastic. So, Bud, unless you've got anything else, that'll probably be tonight's Nolecast.
No, I don't really. I thought he was going to ask us like, if you had to make a change, what are the odds that like Lane Kiffin 0 or Deion Sanders just about 0 would be it. So,
well, you know what I've loved, and the reason why I love Alex Atkins even more is that I think most people at this point are like, you know what? Of all the crazy ideas of the next coaching, I think Alex Atkins is more likely than Deion Sanders or Lane Kiffin. So that's nice. That's a nice thing to have.
Oh. Prime prep happened. So,
yeah, prime prep happened. And I think I said this on the
stuff.
podcast. The only way Lane Kiffin gets hired is if you have an AD who decides he wants to hire Lane Kiffin and isn't going to listen to anyone else about the hiring process. He's not going to listen to a consultant. He's not going to listen to fellow coaches. He's just going to hire Lane Kiffin. And, we'll see. I don't think that's going to happen at Florida State. I think the percentage of likelihood that you listed on that is accurate.
Yeah, that is not an option. All right. Anyway, I actually think this. I think this team could be good. Somebody asked me last night. I was like, "How good do you think this team will be?" I think they're like a top 35 type team with a really difficult schedule, which also plays into the question here, right? You play a lot of these difficult non-conference games. It's going to make you look worse than you are. It's awesome for ticket sales, but if you're not quite as good as you want to be, you don't really have much of a chance in these games. I mean, you get what, Bama and Georgia the next couple of years? Like I don't really project those to be competitive at this point. So maybe you get one of those. It's just very, very difficult to see that happening. Just given where you are as a program right now and how much building still needs to be done. So anyway, that's a factor. That's pretty much all I got on that question. But yeah.
All right, y'all. Enjoyed it as always. Thank you so much for your support. We'll be back first of next week with a podcast. And then, like I said, we're not too off from kind of falling back into our regular season schedule of 3 a week. But very much look forward to some of the preseason content. A lot of fun. And we'll be with you here coming up. But for Bud, myself, and everybody else on the Nolecast team that makes it possible, thank you so much. We'll talk to you next week.